Hello there, welcome back to Beyond Blender. In this video, I'll be looking at texture painting and creating the scene that you can see here playing. That's at the end of the video, but before that, think of this as an introductory lesson in texture painting. Find your way around the software, what things do, and all that good stuff. So let's jump right in. Right, here we are in Blender. And of course, the first thing I need to do is just delete a couple of these things, just like that. And let's model the egg, because we need an egg to do the thing. So I'm going to use the round cube add-on, not an add-on, it's built into Blender. So just fire that up. And from the lovely named operator presets, you can select quad sphere. What's it, quad cube, I think it was. Anyway, you get the point. So I think the defaults are fine. And we're going to need audio, proportional editing to do this part. And I recommend you have an egg shape or some images of egg shapes on your, perhaps a second monitor or somewhere on your screens. You can see what an egg shape looks like. Oh, and there's me. Hello. So what I've done here is selected the top vertex in edit mode, of course. And I'm using my mouse wheel to resize the area of influence by the proportional editing and drag that up. So you get something that resembles an egg shape. As I said, check the reference image, because you think you know what an egg looks like, and you'd probably be right. But when it comes to reproducing it, it might be slightly off. So something like that is going to be good enough. You can be as creative as you like, of course. Doesn't even have to be an egg. It could be I don't know, it could be something else, right? It could be a marble egg or well, that's still an egg shape, isn't it? But you get the point. You can paint whatever you like on these things. It's all about learning the techniques here and finding out more about texture painting in Blender, which is what I'm doing exactly here. This is my journey. So I hope you find it interesting. Learn from my mistakes, guys. That's the best thing. So let me just resize this egg a little bit because it's quite large. Don't worry about the scale too much, simply because I'm going to parent these later on to empties, and then I can just scale the empty. Right, let's head over texture paint, and let's see what happens when we click on it. Whoopsie, we get a message at the bottom: missing UVs, materials, textures detected. Da, da, da. So we need to fix that, and to do that we need to UV unwrap the egg. It needs a texture map, sorry, not texture map, a UV map for this to work. So on the left side of the screen there, you can see the UV map. On the right hand side, of course, we've got the 3D viewports. In edit mode, I've selected all of the faces and select from the menu unwrap. This is what we get: individual faces, nicely laid out in a grid, which is pretty, but that's not really that helpful. And you can see if we select these faces in the viewport, they're not actually square, they're kind of rectangular shapes, but in the UV editor, they're square, which is wrong. So to fix that, make a selection of all of these key edges that look like they separate different parts. So select those, just like that. Just making sure that I've got everything selected there. And then right click, and you want to select Mark Seam. So think of that as a stitching line, just like I have on clothes. That's where it would have been, cut as a cloth and then stitched together in those places. That's exactly what the seams are. So with that done, we can then unwrap it again, and now we get a much better solution, a much more accurate result, which is what we want. Brilliant. But a few more things to think about. That top left icon there, that one keeps the UV map in the viewport on the left, regardless of what you've got selected on the right. So that just might help you to visualize it better. So you can see there I'm selecting faces, and the representation, the equivalent face is selected on the UV side. Just good to know. We don't really need to dive into that. However, you notice here, these are really close together, touching together, and that's not good for texture painting. If you've done this before or dabbled in it, you will know that you want to have a bit of a gap between the UV islands. So I'm going to select all of those islands and select UV pack islands. And when you get that, in the little in the options box in the bottom left, increase the margin, something like 0.05 or 0.06. So you get something like this. You get a bit of a gap between them. And the reason you do that, or you want that, is so that when you paint on it, you don't get some of the paint spilling over into other areas of the model by mistake. So I clicked on it again, and it also says here that we've got missing materials and textures and so on. So what does that mean? Basically, that means we haven't got a material. Firstly, ignore the bit on the left. That's my previous testing. We need a material for the egg first. So I'll create a new material, give it a reasonably sensible name. I'm going to call it, I had to think about it there because I was doing testing and I've forgotten the names. Right, so with that, I'm going to add a texture, image texture. And of course, we're not going to open an image, we're going to create a new one and give this a good name like eggbase2_diffuse or color. And the width and the height, for the purposes of this video, I use 2K 2048, but obviously make it any size you like. But do make sure it's square. That's very important. And I'm going to put a value, the color value of 0.5. So you get like mid-gray and then click OK. And with that selected, I can plug it into the base color just to have it plugged into the BSDF. Right. It's important you select that image texture node when you head over to texture painting. You don't want to have something else selected like this node or the principled BSDF or the material output. So once you've added these nodes, the texture coordinates and mapping, which is set to UV, of course, because we've UV unwrapped the egg, make sure you select this node before you head over to texture painting. Let's try it and see what happens now. Look at that. Fantastic. Okay, this works. Excellent. That's a good start. And there's a smiley face. So with that, let's have a look around and see what we've got around the interface here. So I'm going to make the window smaller on the side. We don't really need that. Although you can paint in that window, of course. So at the top here, you've got some options like the mix type, radius, strength, brush, texture, and so forth. Various options. So, yep. So I'm just showing you here the occlude and backface culling because this kind of, I discovered this when I was messing around. So you can see there, as I'm painting, it's not shown on the other side, which is what you want. But if you wanted to paint on the other side, you've got to turn those two options off. And that will just project your painting right through the 3D model, regardless of which way you're looking at it. You might want that, but for this purpose, I don't need that right now. So I'm going to turn those back to default. We've got some kind of mask in there. We've got texture slots, which is something really useful. You can see the texture map that we created there. Got some display cursor. Fall off, you're going to play around with that quite a lot, as you would with stroke, possibly. Texture masks, we've got textures, some minimal options for brush there. We've got the strength of the painting we're doing there. You can see, as I lowered that bar, if I increase it back to 1, you get a much stronger. This is nothing, I'm sure you're not surprised by this. It's probably you've seen this before in many, many other applications. So it's how you just access that. Now, I should say that for some reason, I couldn't right-click the mouse button. And there are the type of effects you can apply to the brush as you're painting, as you would see in Photoshop or Affinity Photo or other drawing applications. Yeah, getting back to what I was saying. Normally, you can right-click on the screen before I carry on. On the right-hand side there, we've got the similar options to the top. But on the right-hand side, we can change things like the color. We can apply gradient. And that color there I've just clicked on is the secondary color, not the primary color. And you can access that. Again, I found this out just by trial and error. If you hold down the control key, you will start painting with the secondary color. Just like that. Well, not like that. I actually switched them around there. So if this was green, like it is there on as a primary color, hold down the control key to paint with the secondary color. This is cool. You can create a color palette, which I recommend you do because you might want to use, well, you will use the same colors throughout. So if you have a color palette set aside, you can actually just click on the little color patch and select it. So I've just split a new viewport there. I'm going to open up the sketch, not the sketch, the palette that I just found online somewhere. I forget where it was. But I didn't really stick to this too much, but it just gave me some inspiration in terms of colors. You can hide the overlay. Go to View, Display Texture Paint UVs. Just hide that, get it out of the way. A little bit temperamental, these windows, by the way. But they keep going back to other defaults when I go back to Layout and then go back to Texture Paint. They kind of keep changing. Anyway, I've split the window again and I've loaded the sketch, or part of the sketch that I created, just so that I've got that there as reference. And my intention was to use this yellow color there, but in hindsight, I'd rather make it a bit more yellow, more of a traditional yellow. So I've sampled it there, as you can see, with the eyedropper. And feel free to use that hex number if you want to. So let's just change the radius of the brush. As I say, you can right click and access these radius and strength options. But as you can see there, I'm right clicking, but nothing's happening. And it was working, but now it's not working. So I don't know if that was just a bug for me or something that I did in my testing. Anyway, press the F key to change the brush size, and Shift F to change the brush strength. So the same options as you see on the top there, and the same options again you see on the right hand side, Tools, sidebar. So F to change the brush size, Shift F to change the brush strength. You can see there, I'm changing the brush strength, just like that. So that's good to know. What else have we got? The toolbar on the left, not a lot of options to be fair. We've got, as you can see, expand it to see what they are. We've got draw, of course. We've got soften, which I was a little bit disappointed by. It is getting softer, but you can see already it's getting laggy just by doing that. So you can see it is working, it's getting soft, but it's not as strong as I would like it to be. Smear is cool, that works really well. And in fact, I got carried away playing with this, so I think I ended up cutting it out or fast forwarding it at this point. But you can see how that works, and that can be quite cool. There you go, 4 times speed. Yeah, I got sidetracked, sorry. But I would encourage you to jump in, don't be scared of what these things do and see what happens. Now it turns out, for the clone brush, again, I had no idea what I was doing at this point, but it turns out that the clone brush uses the reference where the 3D cursor is just there, you can see at 0. That's its reference point. That's where it's cloning from. So if you want to clone from somewhere else, move the 3D cursor there. The fill tool does exactly what it says on the tin. It fills the model with that color. As you can see, I made it green. And in fact, the fill color, all of these options have their own color value assigned to them. It won't use the same color you used in draw, for example. So let me just make this a little bit more yellow on the fill. We're using the fill tool, right? So might as well fill it all in one go rather than painting it manually. And with one click, I've filled the egg shape with that yellow. So having seen that now, I'm going to increase the saturation of the yellow. Do what you like here, guys. It's just a yellow color. So, you make it any color you like. I'm going to go for a traditional yellow for the Easter egg thing. Right, let's add that yellow to the egg palette we created. Just seeing what these options are here. There's some basic options you can add and take away. Colors, of course. So I recommend you use that. It's very helpful, and you'll use that a lot through this. I'm not going to call it a tutorial. It's more of an introduction, and let's see what happens. Let's figure out how this works as we go along. That's what I did. So you may see mistakes happen. That's fine. Learn from those. So I'm just going to change the color a little bit, bring it down to an off-white. So you almost get like a cream white color. Make it bright again. This is for the eggshell basically, so you could make it white. I just decided to go for an off-white color. So there's a bit less saturation and a bit brighter. Something like that. You can see I've used the fill tool there. So if I like that color, I'm going to click the plus and say, yeah, that's fine. I can use the same color later on for the other eggs, of course. Oh, and there's me again. Yeah, like and subscribe if you like my content. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Right, I'm painting now with the light color. So let's see how we can do. And this, if you click on the icon there, you can copy that brush and have different settings and different parameters for each brush. You've got some options here like airbrush, line, which I should have used in hindsight, but I wanted more of an organic look. As I say, experiment, jump into these options one at a time, click on your model and see what happens. I liked airbrush because the longer you held it down, the more color it added as you held it down. So as you would expect, I use that quite a lot. This part, the fall off, is quite cool because it's basically the shape of your brush. If I click here, just turn that all up, you can see there, you can influence the shading of the brush tip. So you can create your own profiles basically. And there are some presets. If you click on custom, there are some presets there you can use and jump it across or make your own. Let's just reset that curve back to default. This one's interesting. It's just gives you a flat feel. And I probably, again, in hindsight, you learn from this. I probably should have used this later on because I think I made the mistake of just trying to fiddle around with the curve and created some ugly edges, which became quite pixelated. And there you can see on the left side what the image looks like on the UV map. So very important, this part here. So please do pay attention. This part, you have to save the image. If you don't, Blender will not save it for you. So if you close Blender at this point without saving your image and you reload your file, you will lose all of your work. So be warned, please get into the habit of saving your image, which you can do in that window there. You can see there I've got the little asterisks again because I painted something. You can also sample from this side as well. And a top tip for you, in the viewport there, in the 3D one, if you want to sample the actual raw color of the model, hold down the S key. S for sugar, hold it down, and you can click and directly select the yellow color and not what you see on the screen, which is going to be like all the shaded and the lighting influencing the color. So it's a bit like a shortcut to the palette, if you like. So here I am just experimenting with this brush to see what these options do. And I noticed there, when you like click on the edge of the model, obviously it's going to stretch it, which we don't want. So just be aware when you do painting, try and paint within the center of your object. And before I carry on, the mask doesn't seem to work. It worked before and now it's not working. I don't know what I did wrong. So I'm just looking around here to see if there's anything that I changed that would affect that, but I couldn't see anything. So I thought, well, leave that alone then. I'm not going to use masking anyway. So I'm going back to draw brush. As I was saying, make sure you draw within the center mass of your object and avoid painting on the edges, because that will just basically project it down, slide it off the side, and you'll get stretched pixels in your texture map. So what I'm going to do now is draw the eggshell shape at the bottom of the, as you can see on the sketch there. So I'm going to start by doing it like this way. And of course, we don't have a pointy tip. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll just zoom in, right? And paint it in, because my brush size, my brush tip stays relative to my zoom level. And you can do it this way, and that's absolutely fine, of course. So I continued down that road. I pressed 7 for top view there, and then I think it's Control 7 to get the bottom view. Made the brush much bigger and then just stamped it, something like that. And obviously that's too low. So go back to the bottom view, roughly center it. You can increase the brush size as well with the bracket keys on your keyboard, just like you would do in Photoshop. That's helpful. So that line there is pretty good. You can paint this in if you like. I just did it that way. Now that icon there I'm showing you is the pressure icon. And you won't need that if you're using a mouse. But if you are using a graphics tablet, which I recommend you really do for texture painting, I didn't because I didn't want to mislead anyone and say, and presume that everyone's got a graphics tablet. Not everyone does. I do, but I didn't use it. So I just wanted to use the mouse and see how I get on. So yeah, I'm going to carry on creating these variations of cracked eggshell edges, if you like. So make them small, make them big, make them pointy, make them broad. Just speed this up. Same thing, just keep going around. Nice broad one there, a high one there. Add some variation. And again, I'm zooming in here so you can see the pixels of the 2K texture that I created. But then I had an idea. If I just draw a blob at the top of that peak, then paint with the yellow, I can paint negatively, right? So I take away something to create something that I want. That's genius, right? Brilliant. Maybe not that clever, but I like shortcuts like this. So I did that everywhere. I painted these blobs and just took away the white part that I didn't need to leave the pointy bit. I think that worked out much better than me trying to zoom in there like a novice and try and paint these peaks. There we go. Now, as I said, in the stroke method, there is a line option. I did mess around with it before, but I didn't use it at any point in this video. Simple reason being that I wanted it to be more organic looking. So, you know, if you were doing this by hand, you don't have automatic line drawing in the real world, right? You know, just how you would paint these things in the real world. So I wanted that kind of look and feel, kind of bit rough and ready, if you like. You know, mistakes happen, overlaps will occur, colors will bleed into each other, that kind of thing. So don't be afraid to make it a bit, you know, a bit more realistic like that. So moving on, I'm going to create a dark color now in the gray values. So I'm just testing it to see if that color looks okay. And of course, I'm going to add that to the color palette again, so I can reuse it for everything. And I'm just going to make the brush very small, or zoom in, or both. See what I mean? I've lost the image again on the side there. So I'm going to load this up again, and you can see I'm going to go create the eyes and the eyebrows and the beak. So let's make the brush smaller and see how this works. Again, I'm learning here, so I wasn't happy with these results, but I think later in the video, for certain, I was like, okay, why didn't I do this earlier to get cleaner edges, less pixelation? But again, this is all about learning. So from that, next time, I won't make the same mistakes again, hopefully. So yeah, those pixels are not as smooth as I would like, but that could be the size of the texture map, or it could be the fact that my brush settings are not quite optimal. So if you're not happy with that, you can always erase it. So you can select the yellow and just rub it out like that, cover it with the yellow. There's me just playing around again. Let's focus. Come on, let's do this. That's better. Something like that. That's pretty close. So what about the eyebrows? You could draw them as you see them there in those kind of wedge shapes. But then I thought, well, I use the same negative painting technique that I used on the eggshell. So I'll just draw some blobs here and then paint with the yellow to take away the black, to leave the shape that I want. I really felt good doing it this way. I think it works really well. So just find the angle that you want to like kind of cut it up. And that looks good from a distance, so that's fine. And do the same for the other eyebrow or anything else you want to add, you know, the details. So give it a slightly curved profile, thinner on the outside edge and fatter on the inside edge. So it's roughly there. And just adjust that angle a little bit. And we'll start bottom left and then just work our way up. That's probably a bit too thin, so undo that and try it again. And that's probably okay. Just tidy that bit there a little bit sharper. That's cool. Okay. That's cute. So what's next? Well, the beak. Let's do the beak. And I just realized actually in the whole video and the render, I didn't even add little white highlights to the eyes, which I really should have done. Give it some life. So I'm just going to show you at the top here. There's also an option there under texture slots to save all the images. As I said, Blender won't save this for you. You have to save it yourself manually. So make sure you click up there in texture slots or in the left UV viewport, save it from there as you would normally save any image. So carrying on with the beak, same technique again. I'm just going to paint a blob of grey and use the yellow to take away the grey parts that I don't need. That gives it a nice sharp beak shape or mouth shape there. And give it a slightly rounded or curved, I should say, top end there. That looks okay. Pretty happy with that. Now we need an orange color. Orange because the beak is a slightly different yellow, I guess, to the egg body. So there's me just trying out. That's good enough. So we'll add that to the palette. And I'm going to paint again some blobby shape here. So using a fairly big brush for what this is. I made a mistake there, so I just do it again. Undo, Control Z or Command Z. And I'm trying to hit the corners, basically. So roughly there. There you go. Hit the corner. Try and straighten it out a little bit. I'm probably being a bit too picky here, but you get the idea. And I can make that pointy, or I can use the grey paint to just chip away a little bit at the beak colour to give it more of a pointy look. So now switching to the yellow and negative paint the orange, just like that. Awesome. Now I'm pretty happy with that. I think that looks pretty cool. Right, so what's next? Save all images. I'm going to keep saying that, sorry, but if you don't save it, you will lose it. You really don't want that. So there's a plane that I just had there in the viewport, so I can get a better idea of what's happening. Right, so there's our texture we just painted, and we've saved, of course. Node Wrangler will help you with some node management here. So by all means have that installed. So Control Shift and click will show you just that texture. I thought I'd use that for the painting side, so I don't have any shadows or light influencing the colors, but as you can see there. But I decided against it in the end. But I did use it for this part. I just decided to paint in some kind of a bit of blush on the cheek, a bit of, bit of orange on the cheek there. So I used the airbrush for this one. So that's about right. So let's just isolate that cheek there. I lost that image again. Let's go reload that. And you don't have to, of course. So using the orange color, or the same color as the beak, make our brush bigger. Let's drag this set to, was 1. I'll put it into 0.15. And here on the right hand side, under stroke, at the top and on the right, you can select change it from space to airbrush. So as you paint and you click and hold down, it keeps adding that color to the texture. But of course, our brush is way too strong, so we need to make it more of a smooth brush. So let's select smooth preset. See how that works. That's better. So I'm just going to click a few times. As I click, just move my mouse pointer away from the center. So it builds up in the middle and fades off outside. You want it subtle. You don't want it too strong. So of course I need to go back to the shading. Save our image, of course. Let's go back to layout and let's just put that back like that. And there's me again. Hello. Go away. Right. Let's have a look at it under a different HDRI. See how that looks. I'm really happy with that. So what's next? Let's just get rid of that window there. We don't need that. Make that a bit smaller. And yes, as you can see, we're going to paint a roughness map. So in the texture slots, you can select from the plus button there, roughness. Give it a name, of course, and give it a size, as we did before. And I'm just going to fill it with grey and do OK. And you can see that's been added into our material. So let's just connect this up. Why not? Make sure you've selected that. It's active. Go back to texture paint. And now you can start drawing away and painting on your texture. And of course, you don't want to paint in color because a roughness map is grayscale, black and white effectively. So you can see there that's working. Let's change the strength. You can see that there we go. We're still on the what's it called? Airbrush stroke method there. Of course, what you should do now is really make your primary color white and your secondary color black. That way you can use, if you're painting with the white color, there you go, that works. I've painted with black there, which is of course no roughness. Black is no roughness. So my test is confirmed that does work, and it does give me the roughness that I wanted. Well, not wanted, but as a concept. So as I was saying, paint with the white and then hold down the control to paint with the black. And that way you can add and remove roughness without having to keep switching over the, oh look, stencil. So under texture, I'm going to click new. I'll just give that a name. I think about it there. I'm going to go with noise. Maybe not. Let's try Voronoi. Doesn't really make a difference. I'm going to change it anyway. Now I thought by clicking this icon here, it would take me to the texture down here, but it didn't. Right, so there's our stencil option under mapping. And as you move your mouse in the 3D viewport, the Voronoi texture in this case will be displayed in the viewport. You can see there the options for moving that stencil around. And I believe it's right click to move it, shift right click to scale it, and control right click to rotate it. So play around with that, get familiar with it. So I've set the primary color. I thought I did, it's gone back to black again. So anyway, we're going to use a stencil. There I have just painted there. I went through that very quickly. But basically you just go around painting with the stencil on the egg. And I added a color ramp just to have a little bit more control over the roughness map that I painted. So in principle, in essence, it's the same as painting the color map, but it's black and white and it's plugged into the roughness map. That's it. It's the same. Everything I'll do in this video is going to be the same, but different purposes, right? Texture painting is repetition, a lot of it. Same process, in, out. I almost said shake it all about, but I shouldn't say that. That's a bad dad joke. Right. Let's paint a bump map. Let's go crazy. So from this drop down again, texture slots, I'm going to select bump. Again, same principle as before. We're just creating a new image node, texture node. Give it a size, give it a name, give it a base color if you want, and then hit OK. And we're still using a stencil. There's our bump node that it just created for us. Let's plug in the vector mapping into that as well. Why not? Have that selected. Make sure it's plugged into a bump node, which is plugged into a normal map node. Sorry, into the normal slot. And now in principle, we can start painting bump maps, as you can see there. Now, yes, it does look rubbish. I'm not going to lie, but I'll put it down to two things. One, the size of the texture map. Secondly, the brush settings that I used. As I said, I was learning. So I did actually find a better way doing it later on, which you will see later in the video. So initially I used the stencil again. But this time I'm going to use clouds, not Voronoi. So I'd look at some of these options here. Pick the one that works for you. Let's just play around with some of these values. Let's see what other options we have here. Now I turned the color ramp on because I actually preferred this inverted, just like that. So as I'm painting, you can see it looks like a map, doesn't it? With the contours of mountains and landscape height. But yeah, there's our strength. That's probably doesn't help that. That's set to 1. I set it to 0.1. Again, select the texture map. Now as I'm painting, the effect is still there, but it's barely noticeable. And you can see we do have that nice subtle bump map now painted onto our chick. So continue to do that for the whole egg. Work your way around the egg from all the angles. Think about the size of your stencil relative to the egg as you're doing this. You don't want to be zoomed right in and zoom right out and paint with the same size stencil. That's not really going to help pixel density on your texture map. Something to bear in mind. So anyway, I went round the whole egg here, the model, just painting with this texture. I made some changes as I went along. So I really felt I wasn't liking the stepped pixel effect I was seeing on screen. So I was looking at some of the options here to see if I can mitigate that effect. But it still continued to do it. It could be just the way it looks, in texture painting. But, I'm not to know that. So I went exploring, see what happens. Now, anchored is really cool. This is the one I ended up using. So when you use anchored method, you basically click and drag and it creates, it increases and decreases the size of the brush. So that's what I used. Just fast forward through this. Once we get our settings where we want them to be. You can see there how it kind of stamps into the model. I tried to keep the stencil size that big on the screen, my viewport, and my egg size relative to that size of the stencil. By all means, move in and out a little bit, but don't go crazy. Otherwise, you end up with some really weird, like I say, pixelation. Right click and move the stencil around to get different parts of the clouds stamping onto the texture map. Otherwise, you end up with the same pattern in the middle everywhere you click. So that's why I'm moving this around like that. But I'm not changing the size, you'll notice, just moving the stencil. Once you got into the habit of this, it's very quick. You can just literally just pan around and make these circles as big as you want, as small as you like. Hold down the control key to actually paint negatively. So rather than giving bumps, they're indents. So I'll skip ahead because it's the same thing, just time and time again. There's me just clicking away. And there's the end result. Nice bumped map texture. But I did go the extra mile, if that's a thing, where I started to just paint in some. Right, imagine for a second that you're painting this in the real world with a brush, and you've got this paint. So as you're painting on something, paint will accumulate, right? And you may have at the edges a little bit more paint than you would do in other areas. So I just thought I'd try and replicate that a little bit just by brushing that in. So I'll skip ahead and I drew some little bumps here and there and indents. I did that everywhere, on the beak, the mouth, the eyes, the eyebrows. Gives it a little bit more character, I think. A bit more natural looking. Right, let's crack on to the other one. No pun intended. That was brilliant. Right, as you can see, same method as before. Just a different egg. And you can see this egg's got more hair than I have. So there's that as well. There you go. And now we've got the beak to do. So in this time I wanted to do the orange first. and then yellow to take away. And again, well, not again, but I painted some orange also just to mix it up a little bit. And I used the very dark color, the dark gray, to add some heavy outlines to all of these shapes. As I said, I could have used the line tool for this, but that would be cheating. This is done by hand with a mouse, unfortunately, but use a graphics tablet if you have it. You get much better results than I did. Such good fun doing this now. It's really cool. And of course, remember to save your textures. And there you go. We've got our lovely 2 chick eggs. And thank you, everybody. As I was making this video, I noticed that I hit 500 subscribers, which is so cool. I'm so happy. So thank you for that to everyone that subscribed. If you haven't, why the heck haven't you? Hit that subscribe button, please. Thank you. Right, moving on to the Frankenstein egg. Here's a very friendly looking Frankenstein inspired egg. Again, same principles, same process, same shoddy line work by me. And I just went through and just painted stuff by hand, of course. And also I painted the bump map as I did with the other one there. So in this case, I'm just stamping it with a stencil again. And then I went in and painted highlights bumping out on the stitches and then bumping in where the seams are. And a few bumps and dents here and there, just to add a bit more variation to the texture. And there we have it. I'm going to call that done. Really happy with that. And you can see there how that looks. It works really well, actually. Very effective. The bumps coming out and the bumps going in. Right, so we need to add a bolt, of course. I use the bolt, again, that's built into Blender. Add a bolt through the add menu under mesh. Select bolt, of course. Again, no joke intended. Play around with some of the parameters and just butcher this bolt thing to be whatever you want it to be. So what I'm going to do is rotate it in edit mode. And then I'm just going to mirror. I mirrored the bolt part. So I'll split that off from the original, the bolt part, you know, the screw, the thread parts, dare I say, and put it together. Then I made a very simple metallic texture. And here's what my segue into my check out my other video on how to mix 2 or more materials. If you've never tried that, it's very cool, very easy to do. And you get some really cool effects like this very quickly and easily. I just did this very quickly for the sake of this video. I think in hindsight, it would have been cool to paint these as well, like fake metallic things. But like I say, for this video, I just did I used real bolts there. And here's the part where I add an empty to the eggs, so that because we've got separate elements there, I'll select those, select the empty, and parent it to the empty. Now I can just move the empty as a whole now. So there we are, 3 lovely eggs. Now, Frankenstein needs to be bigger, so I did that, scale up the empty. And at this point, I decided to create a base that they stand on. So you can see it's a very basic thing. I did a circle, filled it with a face, and added some insets, unwrapped it, and texture painted it. You don't have to do this, of course. It's the same thing as before. Create a texture, create your brush, and start painting away. I would love to have added things like rocks to this, maybe some cartoony grass made of paper cuts or something, you know, bits of paper, cardboard, that kind of thing. Something you might find at home. And also I painted a very rough and ready bump map there, which is set to 1 just so that I can see it. And then I toned it down in the shader afterwards. So there's I use the same the same texture for the roughness. So it's a quick win there, bit of a cheat, and that's the result. Also painted an alpha mask on the edge of that base later on. I didn't want it to cut off so harsh. So you can go back and paint an alpha mask quite easily. So here's me adding the scene now, and added a few lights, a key light, secondary light, that kind of thing. Oh, there's me again. Go away. Thank you. There you go. That's a good boy. Right. So some lights. And yeah, trying to get the composition basically. So scale, rotate, and place them. Copy the eggs as you please. And make them really interesting. Yeah, and I created an alpha map, as I said. So there you go. Just painted with black on a white texture. So that I get this nice, I gave it a bit of texture there with some clouds. Feathered the fade out. So you get this lovely fade into the background now. So you can composite that anyhow you like. So again, some minor adjustments to the scene, depth of field added to the camera, because these are meant to be small things, right? So it helps to. By the way, check out my other video, how to animate multiple objects and have camera cuts in your animation. And that's pretty much the scene. There you have it. Really happy with that. So I'll let this play out. Thanks for watching. And before I go, here's a screen that says, you know, what have we learned? I'm not going to read all these. Read it in your own time. Pause the screen. But these are the kind of things you've got to watch for when texture painting in Blender. So I'll let this play out, as I said. Thanks for watching. If you like this, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.